Hi, everyone. It's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo. Emil Amok to you. Happy to see you live with my takeout, my Emil Amok's takeout, my takes and all things considerable. Of course, that's what I call it. I don't know if you've noticed, but I've been a little under the weather, as they say. It's been cold in New York, and it even snowed. Um, on one of the weekend shows we had. And then I knew that was going to be the beginning of the end for me because then I got this scratchy throat and I didn't want to endanger this this very last run, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday run of the show at Theater for the New City. So I've been kind of just like in bed by myself here in New York City, trying to recuperate. And so now I have a little bit of a voice, despite how I feel the news around me goes on. And so I feel compelled to do a show, right? I mean, you always feel compelled to do a show. And so that's why we're here. It's Friday. This is a time when we usually have our good friend Daniel Phil Gonzalez. I'm going to bring him up, but I still want to talk about Theater for the New City, the Shine Challenge 2025. If you have heard me talk about it, it's really an animal rights play. It really is. It's a Black History Month play. It's an animal rights play. It's it's a comment on society too at the same time, right? Um, it tells a tale out of the Black oral history tradition where people told these they called them toasts. They're like little rhymes that they told on the streets about the biggest news events of the day, and there was none bigger than in the say from 1912 to the 20s and 30s. None bigger than the sinking of the Titanic. And there was this story going around that there was one stoker, the guy who stoked the coals. There's like 29 of these engines burning to keep the Titanic going. One of the black stokers, and there were Chinese stokers on the Titanic too. To give it a little Asian, you know, sense. So it wasn't just blacks. In fact, it was a very diverse crew of stokers: blacks, Irish, Asian, Chinese. And one of the black stokers, the legend has it, got up to the top and swam to safety, and he became a mythic legend in these thing called toasts that the African American community would tell to each other. Ishmael Reed heard one of the toasts when he was growing up, and he hasn't heard many toasts before. Although you've heard the legend of the Titanic with Leonardo DiCaprio and all the other movies that are out there about the Titanic. Um, but he thought he'd bring back the toast. And one of the toasts, Shine is accused of sinking the Titanic. So because he was the only black man on board. So Ishmael in 2025 decides to give Shine a trial, to bring a black man to justice or give him his due, to clear his name. That's the play. That doesn't sound too complicated, does it? It's actually pretty. It's not Perry Mason though, because if you're a black man seeking justice in America, are you going to rely on other human beings to testify to help you win justice? No, you're going to rely on maybe the animals, the polar bears and the seals and the sharks and all those in the North Atlantic who may have witnessed what really happened. And that's kind of the surreal beauty of Ishmael Reed's The Shine Challenge 2025. If you are in New York City, close by, driving range, final shows Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then we'll see what happens if it travels, if the show has legs somewhere. But it's good show. Theater for the New City. Go to theaterforthenewcity.net. If you're watching me now on YouTube, click a link and get your tickets. No live stream of this show. Just got to be there live in person, and being there live in person makes a difference. It really makes a difference. So that's that Shine Challenge. I'm up for the last shows. I'm up for the last shows. My friend Jordan Barringer is in it. She plays Helen Smith. She is kind of the sex object of the play, and she livens it up. She's for comic relief, playing an Edwardian chaste woman who is accused of all sorts of things. When the Titanic went down, it seems like the Titanic went down, and maybe so did Helen Smith. So, like I said, it's a multifaceted courtroom drama. My friend Brian Simmons plays Shine. He is one of the, I mean, it's almost like Ishmael Reed, the Oakland writer, has collected a number of artists, actors who come together. And it's almost like, like there's a somewhat defamed comic actor who his last name rhymes with Ballin. And whenever he does a movie, everyone sort of flocks to the project. And Ishmael reads the same way when he does a play. He gathers his people, they all flock to him to come to play a character, to be part of the production. And so this is I know, my fourth Ishmael reproduction. And I tend to play the white villain in black theaters, which is sort of my calling, my calling card. But it's a lot of fun. If you're near New York City, check it out. Theater for the New City, the Shine Challenge 2025. Okay, so I have a slight cold or a little bit of a rasp. A little tea helps. Uh, I thought I'd bring in my friend, Professor Daniel Phil Gonzalez, to talk about the things that have been happening because so many things have happened this week. I mean, it's almost like what hasn't happened this week that hasn't made your hair stand on. And right now, I'm in New York City, and because of a deal made by the mayor of New York, Eric Adams, who was under indictment by by the by 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 the feds. A deal was made between President Trump and Adams to essentially drop the charges so that Adams would then do something in return for Trump, like allow ICE into Rikers Island to rough up to see who's out there, what kind of prisoners are out there who actually have some kind of immigration problem that he can then put out there in part of the Trump showbiz. Hey, look, we got these prisoners. We found them. They're here. They're committing crimes. Um, but the prosecutors, to their credit, are now saying no. We're quitting before we drop the charges. Let me bring in my friend Daniel Phil Gonzalez, College of Ethics Studies, Asian American Studies, San Francisco State University. Dan, a lot has been being made about the these prosecutors just quitting, saying no, we're not going to do it. Are they the first heroes in this war against Trump or in this resistance war against Trump?
They're actually not the
Yeah.
first. There are a lot of other people who have not made the choice to take up the offer, which I think is a fake offer
Mm.
of essentially retirement out of the
Oh yeah.
service. And it's going to be people who have gotten early retirement or who could be eligible for an early retirement or outright retirement that would take advantage of that. But so far, the highest number I've heard is about 75,000. And that sounds like a big number to a lot of people, but there's several million
Yeah. All right. But yeah,
people, that are part of federal
but that's
government.
in general. The people out there who are being forced out the labor
No,
force.
no, it's not. These are specific people who are making the choice now, and a lot of people are choosing to stay
Yeah.
in. So those I consider those people heroic because their immediate lives also, just like the people who have just resigned from DOJ and SDNY,
Mm.
particularly, just like them, and it's DOJ
Mm.
Central that these people are retiring from, or I'm sorry, resigning
Yeah.
from, and they are heroic, but they're not the
All
first.
right.
I only disagree with you
All
on that
right. All
point.
right. So I take your point. People who choose to stay in to fight, they're heroic too in their own way. But I'm talking
Absolutely.
specifically in the case of Adams. So the people who are on the prosecutorial team, people are asked to do certain things, and people are saying no. People are saying no, and they're resigning. They're
Yes,
highlighted.
they're heroic. They're heroic in the sense that they are voluntarily subjected. They're not just leaving their
Hmm.
job. They are voluntarily accepting the likelihood that they will be persecuted for their
Yeah.
actions. That's the real problem. That's the real issue. What happens afterwards? Okay, so there's a multitude of things going
Hmm.
on. One of them is are they are is the new DOJ, are they going to be able to find somebody who's actually going to be willing to stand up in court and argue the position that has been disclosed by Bove in his own communications?
Hmm.
Okay, Eric Adams is saying that my attorney would never do such a stupid thing as to make an offer, quid pro quo. God, it's really stupid. I've been wanting, he says, I've been wanting to do this since 2022. I'm on record for that, and that was my argument with President Biden, was that we needed to enforce this stuff. Okay, we needed to cooperate with DOJ in looking for these people, with ICE in looking for these people. Okay, so then my question is, well, why didn't you do it?
Right.
Okay. If you really felt you were going to do it, then why didn't you do it? Why now? Okay. Now, Bove actually says in his own communication, right, to the people that now have resigned, that we want you to do this thing, which means they're going to have to come up with arguments, right? That's what attorneys do. It's a new case, right? They've been prosecuting this case forever. That's not new.
Hmm.
So the prosecution and the investigation have been going on for at least a couple of
Yeah.
years. Now they're being told, disinvest in all of the work that you've done, disinvest in the fact that you've found enough to find this guy guilty. That's really what it's about. They don't go, the DOJ and especially the
Yeah.
SDNY do not go forward with cases unless they know it's a slammer, that they've got this person.
Well, here's the thing.
Okay. And then Bove says it's going to enable this guy to pay greater attention to the immigration issue. He says so in his own freaking
Right.
communication.
So it's clear that there's a linkage there to what then Adams will do next, which is allow ICE to
Yes.
go into Rikers Island and
In other words, Adam's lying
yeah.
again.
And so, I
Okay.
mean, here's the thing. There are calls for Adams to resign, Adams to get out. He's not going. I think he's somewhat buoyed somewhat by the fact that he's got this deal with Trump. But when the prosecutors, when they say they're quitting, I mean that
They can't
yeah,
participate. They also understand that on the other side, if they were to participate in this process, they would literally get laughed out of court.
yeah,
Okay, and they're putting their own future reputations at risk. So they're facing a risk from the left, and they're facing risk from the right, and they're facing a risk from the
yeah.
middle, and that is, their basic careers are on the
It,
line. So they're being threatened all kinds of ways. That's why I agree with you that they're
Yeah,
heroic.
and that's why I bring it up because a lot of the national press that's it's looking at this case because there's so many things that are happening, right? This
Oh
is like the
man,
latest one, but when you have prosecutors saying I quit, and you have prosecutors who aren't left or right, they're really many of them are conservatives. Well, one who's a Federalist Society type person, Harvard,
she was
yeah,
the lead.
the lead,
She was
yeah.
the lead. She was the person who was at least temporarily
Yeah.
right the
I mean,
lead.
she was appears as if to be tried and true conservative. However, to be totally objective when it comes to the law and her allegiance to the Constitution and the law, which is the way it should be. What do you think this will do to other Republicans who are not so, um, who do not have the same kind of integrity?
Uh, Not much. I think it depends on where they're located.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
good.
Yeah, I think it depends on where they're located.
Mhm.
Okay. So these folks are located in a very sensitive area. Okay. Uh, and it's usually out of public view. The kind of argument that you're seeing out in public right now, between Beauvais and whoever else that's temporarily in the lead of
Mhm.
DOJ, okay, and these attorneys, is something that usually is clandestine. It goes on inside the department, and so to have this go outside threatens people. Not It threatens them more to be silent than it does to get them to encourage them to come out. That's the problem. And so what I am comparing the situation to is what you see already in Congress. There are a lot of people in Congress, especially in the Senate, that know what's going on is really bad. It's bad for them,
Mhm.
it's bad for the country, but they fear reaction from the Trumpers, more than, and because they're the majority of the Republicans in the Senate. They're obviously the majority of the House. Okay. And so that's what they fear most, the immediacy of Trump reaction from somewhere within the administration. So I don't think it's going to have much visible effect.
But it's really a kind of a treacherous kind of politics because it really it makes
Yes.
people immobile. It makes people intractable. They can't do the
It,
right thing.
abs- but that's been, Emil, it's been true for decades. It's been true for decades. It's just that more people are immobile now. Okay? There were always people who were immobilized by the politics, particularly of the right.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not going to say that this doesn't happen on the left as
Oh
well.
yeah.
Okay? But because it happens on the left as well, but it's not an equal measure. It's not in an equal measure. When people say, well, both sides do it, that's really an inane, right, and unequal, a comparison of unequal realities. Okay. The reality is that violations of the Constitution, in real terms, violation of their oath right up front, right, has been coming from the right more than the left for 70 years. Okay. Do I have to go through all of the examples from history?
Yeah.
See, the
Yeah.
problem, Emil, is you know you know this history, and in some instances far better than I know it, with greater
Yeah.
depth. One of the reasons is you worked in Congress.
Well, I mean,
Okay.
I was
There
a
is
staffer.
no understanding. There is no substitute for experience. When somebody has had the experience of having worked in Washington, having seen this stuff work up close. Now, I've seen stuff secondhand because of my father's position as a custodian, as a janitor for the state Supreme Court. And so my interaction with some of the justices and their clerks, as from the time I was a child,
Mm.
right, gave me some inside perspective. They told me the truth. And some of them were Republicans, some of them were Democrats. This was in the day when there were liberal
Yeah.
Republicans. Remember
Yeah.
that?
Well, what's happening
Okay.
now is that I hear a lot of the conservatives who aren't never Trumpers, like William Crystal the other day arguing about, hey, it's okay to be woke. There's a right to be woke. This is from a conservative like Crystal.
Got it.
Eh,
Yeah,
eh,
but Jesus.
I'm just saying that so you have people.
That's like you telling me they finally learned how to do the
Yeah, well,
twist.
I'm just saying that how about the progressives? There's a new movement to have a moderate, the new Democrats are calling themselves, and they're in the middle, right? They're almost they almost sound like the blue dog Democrats of Clinton's day.
Oh
They
no.
almost sound like that, but some progressives are joining, and it's making some of those new Democrats a little uneasy because it sounds like either the progressives are watering down or maybe they are um, you know uh, infiltrating. So it's hard to be a progressive.
Infiltrating what?
Well,
They're infiltrating what?
infiltrating the new Democrats, these moderates. I mean, it seems that uh, people should want to see a little more fluidity in their stances if they want to move forward somewhat. But I'm seeing an anti-progressive kind of sentiment when people talk
Yes,
about the New
yes,
Democrats.
yes. Okay, I agree. Okay, but that's the same kind of thing. You know, I know that you're going to bring this up later.
Mm.
Okay, that's the same kind of attitude that people who believe in
Oh
meritocracy,
yeah.
that it is possible to establish meritocracy, and a regime,
Mm.
right, that will be fair to everyone.
Mm.
Okay, and that people who actually perform well, right, are going to be the ones who get advancement, right? They get acceptance to
Mm.
universities. They're recognized for their academic as well as their professional excellence, and that they move forward from there. And that's what people want to believe. I do not fault them for believing
Mm.
that. I fault them for choosing mechanisms that are unlikely, if at all, right? That are very probably inconsistent with those goals. That's it. It's pure and simple. You are a graduate of, I think, one of the best public schools to exist, high
Oh
schools in the whole
yeah.
country, especially at the
Mm.
time, especially at the time that you were there. I was in a competing private institution in the early and mid 1960s. So I'm older than
Mm.
you, okay? But I am witness to what was going on between our two institutions all the way into the 70s and 80s. The closest competing institution in the city and county in San Francisco was Lowell High School. You're from there, okay? They went through a series of court actions,
Mm.
right, that went all the way up to the federal level that led to the imposition of a discriminatory standard against Asians and against Chinese in particular. And that was pushed by the NAACP. Okay, it was pushed by the NAACP in order to increase the number of African Americans that would be admitted to Lowell High School. Okay, and it was done because they believed that, not the reverse of meritocracy, right? They believed that some people were
Mm.
overqualified. So they said these people are so qualified that they're keeping even the best of other communities out of that institution. So what we have to do is set a ceiling for them that is higher than everyone else. This was a ridiculous plan. And I got into arguments with some of my schoolmates from the state college, and who we went together to Hastings, and I got into arguments with them there. Okay, because this was an idiotic plan. It was, and they would be really angry with me for saying that. And even members of my own caucus, the Asian Law Students Association, right? Even they were critical of me, but I was right.
So
Okay.
you didn't want the
Now,
limit.
what?
You don't want the cap put on Asian.
No, it was
Yeah.
stupid. It was really stupid to do
Yeah.
that. Okay, it was outsized discriminatory, and the federal courts agreed with
Yeah.
that. The federal courts allowed that to go into effect. Okay, first of all, it didn't work. Okay, more blacks were not admitted, but at the same time, more Chinese were excluded. Okay,
No.
so that experience gave rise, right, to the Chinese. Obviously, the Chinese families, especially immigrant
Mm.
families, they sued,
Yeah.
the city. They
Yeah.
won. Okay, they won against that practice, and so the NAACP and one of their lead attorneys was one of my friends from state. He was from Black Students Union, and he was one of my friends from the SF State, man. And we used to show up at the same cultural events and stuff like that, see each other all the time. But we had really severe arguments over these issues. This was not going to work.
Well, all right. So
Okay, so they did not benefit. Now, what happened at Harvard? You got a bunch of Asians, particularly Chinese, some of them not even American citizens or permanent residents,
mm.
right? They were part of that lawsuit. And what was their expectation? That Asians would be admitted in higher numbers. That's really what they were thinking. Because if you look at the data, right, that is now invisible.
Mm. Yeah.
If you look at the data, the likelihood is that the Asians were going to score better. And this is true not just on a local level, in the East Coast and Ivy League schools. This was true throughout the country. This was true, for the applications to UC schools. This was true for the applications at Stanford. Okay. And so they really thought that this is our route. This is our route to us. And it was personal for them to be
All
admitted.
right.
right?
Right.
It's an individual objective, and they constituted a small class of people. Okay, what did we say? We're saying this 2 years
Yeah.
ago on this
Yeah.
show,
Eh,
right? That they're not going to succeed. They're going to think they succeed if they get a court decision in their favor. But how are they going to
yeah.
measure whether or not people are actually being admitted on the basis of meritocracy? Because now, what did the court decision say? You can't, and it just simply said you got to get rid of that program. But what did Harvard, Princeton, and all the other Ivy League schools in series do? They said, we're not gonna make race,
Yeah.
right, a category
Yeah.
anymore. So how can you see who's being admitted?
So
They only recently what it took them 2 years. Harvard finally recently released the data, right? And what did it show? Asians didn't make any
right. I
gains.
mean, so they won the suit, and we thought that it would settle something. I only bring it up, and I'm glad you bring it up in advance, because I wrote a column talking about a guy whose son, 18-year-old child prodigy, hired by Google, couldn't get into any UC schools. He got into one. He got in. He got into UC Merced. Couldn't get into any UC schools. So he's suing UC and the Department of Education for discrimination, and he's saying, and no one would take his case. So he went to AI and wrote up his lawsuit, filed his lawsuit, and he's hoping to get some kind of remedy. I feel for the guy. His son is 18, works for Google, not going to college, but I think, what do you tell him? And this was the parallel that I try to pose. Here's this guy saying we need meritocracy. Donald Trump says we have meritocracy. On the other hand, we have Pete Hegseth getting into the Department of Defense. We have Tulsi Gabbard being approved, Director of National Intelligence. We have RFK Jr. being, all these people totally unqualified. Health and Human Services. We have Kash Patel potentially to be named director of the FBI. All of them unqualified, no meritocracy. What do you tell that guy who is suing because his son, his 18-year-old prodigy son, can't get into UC Berkeley?
It's interesting why he's suing, because if his son is 18, his son can sue in his own right.
Mm.
Okay. So it's interesting that this guy, the parent, is
He said
suing.
he says he
This is kind of a
he
similar.
says he's doing it for himself because he's angry because he's you know pissed off.
Well, then he doesn't have standing. He doesn't have standing.
Oh,
He has no standing. You have to be the person who's injured,
the injury, right?
and so he has to show how he is injured. And if he doesn't have standing, if he can't show a direct connection, right? Like he could make an argument like this: I was so distraught,
Yeah,
right? That I became mentally unbalanced, and I had to go see a psychiatrist, and I'm still on treatment for a psychologist because my son was not treated fairly. I mean, what's he going to
yeah.
do? I mean, he has no standing. So what I'm going to tell him is, you got no standing.
We'll see now.
And then the second
Yeah,
thing, I would tell him is, look, man, you're not understanding what's going on. Okay. You should, if you're gonna attack something, you should have your son attack it, right? Because he's the guy with standing. And then he should be attacking whatever the criteria is that the UC systems are using for admissions. So that would be a good way to attack. What criteria are you using? If you want to
uh,
argue meritocracy, then attack that. You have to do a systemic structural attack there.
there are two other suits being filed at the same time. One by another group that is attacking the so-called holistic approach of UC, and then there's
That's criteria
right,
based.
right,
That's
and then
right.
there's
That's
another
criteria
one
based.
that's filed against Pennsylvania State Universities. They have standing, but it's interesting. You're the lawyer, so you would notice, and I know the importance.
I am not a practicing
I
attorney. I am
I
not a
know, but
practicing attorney. I'm a student
an
of the law.
academic.
I still consider myself
Right.
a student of the
But
law.
it's important because I remember having had friends who were law students who were deeply involved in their studies. papers they would do on standing, and standing is like everything, right? If you don't have standing,
It's everything. It's one of the first jurisdictional
yeah.
elements
So all right, so this guy,
that you either can be in court or
so this
not.
guy doesn't have standing.
No,
Yeah,
no.
no injury. Well,
Not only does he have he lacks standing and he lacks
yeah.
understanding.
Well, I mean, I kind of lacked understanding by putting him next to how do you square, meritocracy, this guy's cry for meritocracy and his son, and
Oh yeah,
and
no, no,
and
you can't, you can't. And so what you're doing is really you're juxtaposing two things that actually can't be compared. Once again, the reality is that the right, and particularly the Trump right, doesn't care about standards. They care about
yeah,
loyalty. That's all they care about. And there is an element within American society that doesn't care really about standards. They care whether or not Trump wins or
yeah,
loses. They want to see Trump win. I mean, it's as simple as that. Now that universe, that part of American society has grown. Okay, even though yes, they only won by a
yeah,
plurality, right?
yeah.
Oh yeah, but that plurality now is invested in Trump. They're invested in Trump and Musk, right? And even though Musk has got he's got negative
Oh
poll
yeah.
coverage, man. It's
He's
really, oh man, it's really bad, and so it's kind of laughable, right? I was more entertained by his son picking boogers out of his nose, right, than anything else that was
well. Tell
going
me
on,
about
and I was also entertained.
t- tell
What?
me about that. I mean, it seemed kind of disrespectful to the Oval Office and to the whole idea of this.
Yeah, you're gonna have to rename it. It's not the Oval Office
It's like
anymore.
it's Musk's playpen or something, or it's
Yeah.
daddy daycare, or I just
Well, see, under Clinton, it was the oral
oral,
office.
yeah, yeah,
So under Trump, it's going to be another
yeah.
orifice.
Well, I just think that Musk this week really exposed just how much power he has over Trump. If people thought that maybe Trump was, oh, he's still in control, he's still, I don't know now. I think it's pretty clear.
Trump isn't even in control of himself. Remember when all of the psychologists and psychiatrists co-authored a
Oh
book
yeah.
that said this guy's dangerous?
Mm,
Yeah, okay. And and everything they wrote in there has been proven.
yeah.
In the first 4 years that Trump was in office, it was all proven. It is being proven again
Yeah.
now. The difference is that he's got more people who are willing. They're not going for credibility in his first term, right?
Yeah.
That's why he had all the generals. That's why he had people with strong legal backgrounds, right? And
Mm,
he had people who had strong economic, and they were from the conservative side, but they were competent. Okay, now we've
yeah.
got people, some who are competent, some who are not. And people were backing up Pam Bondi, for example. They're saying, well, she's got a really great record, right? As a prosecutor, she was very fair handed when she was working in Florida, so, you got to give her a chance, give her a break. Well, you've seen what she's done. She just
Yeah.
got approval. And what did she do? DOJ's got to quit the case against
Yeah.
Eric Adams. So
Well,
there it
they're
is.
just they're like actors
And she's
playing different
competent.
roles, and now the role is, Trump at all costs. Trump, without a doubt, Trump is the one. And you see it, I mean, Emil Bove, the bad Emil, you see what he's doing as in Justice Department. But it's a little disheartening because you want to see some kind of consistency and some kind of you want to see the rule of law prevail. And when it goes back and forth like this, you say to yourself, oh, how are we going to get to the truth, or how are we going to get to justice unless we
Yeah.
have more of those people like the prosecutors who quit the Eric
Yeah.
Adams case and publicly quit and make such a stand to say, hey, look, we can't go through with this. This, we're gonna end the charade now. I mean, and if people are paying attention, maybe that will start moving the polls against Trump,
No.
who,
Yeah, we had this conversation in part like over the last two times that we've met.
yeah,
And I said what the first time was when you said, Well, when are people going to understand? When are they going to when they're going to see and feel that the kind of things that they're doing have such an adverse effect on other people? And what I said was, you got to understand, first of all, the root cause is individualism. People are looking at themselves and their own condition, and they really don't care much about everybody else except if they agree with them. Okay, so there's a familial kind of relationship among all of these people that see the world the same way. Okay, and that's really
Mm,
common. Okay, it's the
mm,
source of things like psychologists call mass hysteria and all that, right? Now, I'm not seeing these people are suffering from mass hysteria, but they are suffering from a common ability to deny fact. Okay, they and one of those things, one of the reasons they're able to do that is because they get continuous validation of afactual perspectives, right? Because they are choosing to
right,
be informed, by sources that lie constantly, okay, and that exaggerate or omit things that are contradictory to their particular position. We're facing an interesting situation though now, because Mr. Murdoch is taking positions, and the Wall Street Journal, for example, is taking positions directly contradictory
oh
to at least
yeah,
three different policy directions that the Trump administration is moving towards. Okay,
yeah,
and
tariffs,
yeah, well, and that's not the
inflationary,
only one. Oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that, and so maybe we'll see. I mean, Trump and president as the president is not a bad thing as long as people are honest within the right. I mean, people on the left will always push back, Democrats will always push back, but it's the people on the right, if they have a backbone and they fight, that's what you need. And so maybe you have a little bit when you have the Never Trumpers speaking out more, when you have Rupert Murdoch standing up to tariffs, when you have, people saying, hey, tariffs are inflationary, this idea of,
Well, yeah. Well,
you know,
okay. I put the tariff issue in terms of how it's going to affect the public. I put the tariff
mm,
issue right alongside your position that there has to be a humane element, to American society, and that humane element will rise. Nah, it's got to affect people personally at their level, and the tariffs
yeah,
will do that. The tariffs will do that if he follows through. Right now, he's still just waving the sword around, right? And
yeah,
he's showing that I have the capacity to make this happen because now it's written policy, okay, and I give it a deadline. Okay, so he's putting a deadline up there, okay, and it's in March, and I think it's the second week of March, and
yeah,
so here we go. Is the market reacting to that? Yes. Does it? It's been fluctuating. It went down
yeah,
like crazy last week. It's up again a
yeah,
little bit. All right. So the market really doesn't know what it's doing, and one of the things that Trump follows more closely, the two things are polls, right, and the market. So let's see what happens. Well, I think that it's going to take about 6 months for these things, whether or not the tariffs go through. It's going to take about 6 months for the reaction to
yeah,
truly affect the majority of Americans, particularly those who are at a lower income level than, let's say, that are lower than 250,000 a year,
yeah,
300,000 a year. If people are above 200,000, 250,000 a year, they will be able to, they'll have difficulty, but they'll be able to forage through. Okay.
yeah,
Even in high income, high rent, high real estate price areas like California and Hawaii, even in those
yeah,
areas, they'll be able to survive if their incomes are high enough. But more than what, 60 or 70% of the American public is below that level of income, and so o- the only thing that makes it survivable comes down to geography, right? And you remember a lot of people moved to Idaho, right, because they wanted to get rid
yeah,
of, they wanted. Remember when that happened? And I said, "Yeah, how's
yeah,
that working for you?" And then more recently, they moved to Florida, which is really stupid, right?
yeah.
I can't.
I think
And
so.
then Texas is more understandable, okay?
A little
Like
bit, a little bit.
because
I've lived there. I've lived there.
it's more understandable, but the effect of those people with those levels of income. It's the people who can afford to move that did that, right? The people
Now
who
people
can't
can't
afford to move. Yeah. The
they
people
can't
who
afford
can't
to move
afford to
now.
move. Yeah. And so what happened when people who have those levels of income move in large numbers to particular places like Florida, which is small, right? And then Texas, which is large, but where they want to be in suburban sector. These people are not farmers, right? Okay.
Yeah.
They're commuters. They're people who can do remote, right? Work via the computer, via the internet. Okay, they have higher incomes. Well, when they do that, they purchase into the area. What happens to the real estate values?
Goes up.
Up. Yep. According to the market, right? So it's
Yeah.
market driven. All right.
Yeah.
Now, we have been criticized, you and I, okay, because one of the issues that I raised, our last meeting was people can't afford to get a single family dwelling. They can barely
Yeah.
afford rent. Okay. And
Yeah.
so one of the respondents to us, and I thank them for responding because at least they're paying attention and they're listening or watching what we're saying. They said, well, the reason they can't afford anything is because of the last 4 years. Okay. And of course, blaming it on Biden administration.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Now,
that's a standard.
did
Yeah.
Biden policies actually contribute to inflation? The answer is yes. The question is, what degree did they contribute to inflation? Secondly, did the Biden administration do things to try and lessen the impact of things like COVID relief, right, and all the rest? And that the answer
Yes.
is yes. And they were
Yeah.
having a positive effect. Inflation was indeed going down. Problematic, right? Bird flu hits,
Mm.
right? Makes eggs more expensive, right? And then the Trump administration, of course, is saying we're going to drill, baby, drill. Well, then people are going to try and stabilize the price of oil, and they're not going to stabilize it low. They're going to try and stabilize it high and hope that it goes up, even though the suggestion that drill, baby, drill means more plentiful petroleum products, more plentiful fossil fuels, right? Therefore, price
Mm.
goes down. That's the again another joke, right? People
Yeah.
remember Naomi Klein and
Yeah.
disaster
Yeah. I remember.
capitalism. Yep, this is disaster capitalism is afoot, man, especially in Southern California with the fires. Okay,
Yeah.
we're about to see it again with the floods in the
I,
middle of the U.S. The
yeah.
Mississippi River, the Missouri, the Tennessee, all of that stuff is gonna blow up in their faces. So when all of those things happen, that is when people are going to start realizing that many of these policies are really injurious to not only the American population overall, but it's injurious to the United States reputation and relationship globally.
All right, so that's a good transition to the next thing this week that bugged me, and that's when Donald Trump said, "Yeah, I talked to Putin, and we're going to end the war in Ukraine." I was like, is Ukraine in the talks? I mean, is Ukraine? Does Ukraine matter? I mean, and meanwhile, Europe is saying, was saying the same thing I was saying. Aren't you going to like put Ukraine in there? And then there was Hegseth out there essentially giving away the story, giving away negotiation points, saying,
That's
"Oh,
right.
we're not Ukraine's not going to go back to the original,
Yeah.
borders. We're
The
not,
Ukrainian goal of reclaiming its territory is not
yeah,
practical. That's essentially what he
right."
said.
But and some people even went further, saying that 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 Trump was really surrendering to to Putin, which if people remember how I talked about Helsinki in 2018 and how, Trump and Putin met and Putin just wiped up Trump and it was embarrassing. I mean, you want to root for Trump in
It was
certain
it was it was
circumstances.
near treason. It was near
Yeah,
treason because
yeah.
what Trump said was, you know, in response to a question, right, from a journalist who said, "Well, the CIA, right, and the State
Mm,
Department have taken these positions on that issue," and he said, "Well, I don't." He says that he's not done it, okay, and that they did not mess with the 2016 elections and so why should I not believe him? I believe him. Okay.
right, right.
And then the follow-up question, do you believe him over the CIA? Well, there are things that we do that sometimes they're wrong. And then when he was confronted with, well, but Putin is suspected of having committed war crimes and assassinations, and he said,
Yeah.
well, we kill people too. Okay,
See
that, that
here,
stuff was
yeah, I
incredible,
would.
right?
Well, here's the thing. That was in 2018. People
Yes,
saw that, and still in 2023, they vote for, or 2024, they still vote for this guy, and now
because
he's going
that's
to
what
do
they
it.
want. That's what they
He's going to do
want.
it
They
again.
don't care. They want a man. Look at who in his later life, President Carter was seen as one of the better presidents, and he was a
Mm,
one-term president, right? But he was
mm,
seen as one of the better presidents for a couple of limited sets of issues. One of them, right, is the accord, signed by the Israelis and the Saudis, right, and the Egyptians. Okay. Now, Clinton also gets credit for some doing some of that, right? And you'll notice that those are two Democrats. Okay, so the when you look at the reality of how people have tried to deal effectively with what's going on in the Middle East, right? There was more movement in the proper direction, right, under democratic leadership. But the Israelis took care of that by committing assassinations in their own right, okay, of major leaders, okay, particularly people who signed the early accords during the Carter regime. Right? That actually happened. So the American public really doesn't have any recollection or memory or even interest in understanding those facts. That's a major problem in American society because if you're not unwilling to see the continuum of history, right, then you're not only doomed to repeat it, right, or at least for the history to rhyme, as a lot of people say. There's not a direct repetition, but it does rhyme. Okay,
mm,
then each generation is doomed, right?
mm.
To the reality that there will be problems like that arising again. So here we get we're still talking about two-state solutions, right? For
Yeah.
for 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 Palestine, in the interest of Palestine, and people are still rejecting it for exactly the same reasons. It's been 60 years of those arguments, and they're still maintaining the same freaking argument. Now, why is that? And the answer is contemporary Zionism. What the Zionists say, look, all Zionism means is that Israel has a right to exist. That's the original Zionism. Yes. Okay.
Mm.
What does Zionism mean now? It means what Trump said. We're going to move the Palestinians out of Gaza and turn it into the
Right.
Riviera.
Right.
Okay. All right. What is that? What people say, well, they were committing genocide by committing war. Well, what's more effective, right? A war and killing people off, by the tens of thousands, right? Probably around 60,000 people, or most of them children. Okay. What's more effective, that or what Trump just said? We're just going to move them out. They're going to be distributed among Jordan and Egypt. They've turned that down.
Yeah, they
Jordan,
don't want that.
King of
Yeah.
Jordan was just in your face, said no. Okay.
Well, so what's going to get solved first, Ukraine or Gaza?
Oh man, I think Ukraine, and I think it's going to be because Trump is going to give away the farm. You
I
said you
think that,
said that
yeah.
he's surrendering. He's not surrendering. He thinks Putin's his buddy. You got to understand, Trump is nuts. Okay, he's an
Yeah.
egomaniac. What makes him a megalomaniac is that 49% of America voted for him. That's what makes him a megalomaniac. What makes him a megalomaniac is that all of the billionaires came out. The
Mm.
five of them come and ran out of Silicon Valley, right? And they said,
So
"Yeah, we're gonna back this guy up."
so once again, back to my question about when do people quit him? It always gets back to that question. When do people quit him and say enough, enough? This isn't the guy.
It's
Uh,
they've got to
it,
really get hurt. They've got to. I think it's got to be at least a double harm, a twin harm. One of them has got to be the economic harm at their level. Okay, in
mm,
other words, the price of
yeah.
everything has got to get worse, and it's got to hold worse for a long time. And by a long time, I mean several months. Okay,
Oh yeah.
because that will drain all of them. I mean, they're bitching now, okay? But if it gets worse, they won't be able to bitch. They'll just be broke, okay? We're going to start to see the same kind of problem that we did with credit, okay, with people overcommitting. We're already seeing an increase, right, in people not being able to cover
Yeah.
their credit debt, and that's going
Yeah.
to increase. It's going to do the same thing that led to the failures during 76 to 81. That
Yeah. But
people always go ahead.
I mean, you look through all these periods, the 70s, the 80s, think about the 2007, 8, 9.
Yeah, right.
We survived it all. It was pretty bad, and we
Yeah,
survived it all. But it could get worse when you
yeah.
talk about the kind of inflationary tactics that Trump believes in.
Well, the
And
great
then now he's talking about reciprocal
yeah,
tariffs
yeah,
now. If you put a tariff, we'll get a tariff,
yeah, yeah.
which is crazy,
Well, the middle class never recovered from the Great Recession.
right?
Okay, one of the because the real estate values kept going up. Okay, and one of the reasons they kept going up is supply.
Yeah.
Okay, and the next thing that hit supply was COVID,
Yeah.
and remember we couldn't people couldn't get wood. You
Yeah.
couldn't get wood, right?
Yeah, speaking of that, I'm here in New York, and I've been reading stories about LA and the floods or the
And now the
rains,
mudslides
which
now.
and then the mudslides. But still the stories of people who've been burnt out. I mean, people around the country have kind of moved on a little bit. They forget that entire communities were just burnt down. There's like nothing there. Now, some people in the Palisades are going to be, they're going to be okay. Most are well to do. Altadena, not so much. There's some people in, less wealthy parts of Palisades who are, like people who lived on $1 million beachfront trailer homes, which I would have liked to have had. But now, they're burned out. They're not, they may not be coming back. I mean, I was just reading some stories, yesterday. It was very sad, and I don't know if the whole country has a sense yet about how tough it is to rebuild from a tragedy like that.
No, they don't, and they don't care. I think there's a lot of California haters out there in the rest of
Yeah, that's true.
United
Yeah,
States, especially in the
yeah,
Midwest. The Midwest and the South, there's a lot of California haters, and so everything
yeah,
calamitous that happens to us out here, especially in the four major states, right? California, Oregon, Washington, Nevada. Okay, everything that happens to us, they don't care about. They care a little bit more about Arizona, right? Because Arizona is pretty much a red state. It's starting to turn purple a little bit.
yeah,
The Gallego victory is promising, right?
yeah,
Also, the kind of demographic change that's happening in Texas is also happening in Arizona, and we're talking about the Mexicanization, Mexicanization,
yeah.
or the Latinization.
Mexicannization. Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah,
also the
yeah,
Asianization. There's a lot of Asians who are moving into those states, and so
yeah,
uh, you got a criticism, uh, and you thought it was in reaction to the previous article in ASAM News, right?
mm,
Uh,
mm,
and I and the criticisms are usually really short and very general, right? And I think the
mm.
criticism I'm referring to is, are you the guy who wrote that anti-Trump article? You know,
Oh yeah,
you know,
Trump
yeah,
bashing article.
you should be ashamed of yourself. Stop embarrassing us Asians. Okay. Now, first of all, he's in the minority. If he's claiming to be representative of quote us Asians, right? He's wrong
Mm,
because the vast majority, and the exit polls clearly show almost 60% of the Asian vote went for Harris and Walz.
yeah,
Less than 40% went for Trump. So whoever that person is, if they're genuine, right? And this is my question. I don't think that person was Asian because they would have just stopped with stop embarrassing us. Okay.
yeah,
But he went with stop embarrassing us Asians. Why do you got to say that when you're responding, right? In
yeah,
a format where it is about Asians and the content is Asian, the perspective is Asian, it's all about Asians. Why? Why would you say that? Okay,
And
so it's a person
redundancy.
who's probably
He's
not Asian.
redundant. He's redundant.
Yeah.
Or maybe not
So
Asian on the inside.
so why don't you quit pretending to be Asian and then speaking, and then even if you are, you're speaking for the minority that voted for the loser, because Trump,
Mm,
regardless of his winning, is a loser. That's it.
mm,
It's pure and simple. This
yeah.
guy, you follow this guy, you're going to hurt the country, you're going to hurt yourself. All of the things that we've been saying for I don't know how long now, maybe 6 or 7 years, right?
Yeah.
It's all happening and people still refuse to see it, you know? So,
Again, yeah. We just couldn't resist the X.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
So
trying to,
so
you know what? I've crossed over and I'm doing Blue Sky, and I'm trying to
mhm.
figure out how to connect your vlog to Blue Sky so
Oh
that
yeah,
I can
do it.
make the link.
Do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well,
so
Restream doesn't give you an instant button to make the link, so I have to figure out a way to actually use your
the link I
internet
sent you.
address,
Yeah. Or
and then
the
post it, because I see all these people, man, posting long ass statements and also whole videos connected to through Blue Sky. There's one guy that I that I really enjoy following. You might want to check him. Have you? You probably have checked him out. He calls himself God.
oh
He's
God,
on Blue
no, I don't
Sky.
know God.
He calls himself God. Yeah, check it out, man. I'll send you a link. But it's
Sorry, it's not the open mic guy who called himself God. I thought he thought he was being original. Anyway, hey Dan, in the time remaining, um, Chinese New Year in San Francisco.
oh
Usually
yeah,
it rains like crazy. I was in the
looks good.
parade once.
Okay.
It was fun. It was fun. It was fun being that parade. I enjoyed it.
This was on
Um,
you were still on TV. You were doing.
no, no, this is I was with an insurance company. I was
Oh,
marching
okay.
with, and it was still fun. It was still fun, to be out
It
there
is.
and
It is.
waving at
It's a good
people.
time.
Yeah, and but I don't know. I haven't been there in about 10 years to the parade. Um, and but it also comes at a time when the NBA All-Star Game is in San Francisco.
Yeah.
So there's like
Yeah.
tens of thousands of people coming to the
Yeah. Yeah.
city. So
And the parade procession is actually closer to Chase than it
yeah,
was back in the old days. Back in the old days, it was on Grant.
yeah,
Now it's all downtown.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, all right. So that's happening this weekend. Hey, you saw the Super Bowl? 175 million people. I said I wasn't going to watch it. I didn't watch it. I saw a little. He touched the ball. He
He,
touched it
he
three
held the
times.
ball, yeah, a couple of times, made a
Yeah, I
couple of
mean
yards.
it was he got like 75 yards. I mean it's
Yeah,
more than
yeah,
more yards than the Chiefs. I didn't care for the game. I said why I wasn't going to watch. I didn't even see the halftime show. Did you enjoy the
yeah.
halftime
We saw
show?
the whole thing. Yeah, we watched it.
Yeah, I didn't even see. I saw part of the halftime show later. I like Kendrick Lamar. I don't understand everything, although now I understand the joke about peop artists who like A minor or artists who like playing A minor.
That's pretty obvious, and he's been doing that particular rap for a while.
Yeah,
It's anti Drake rap. Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
I didn't
he
follow
also
the
a lot of
anti-Drake
his
thing.
stuff was really anti-Trump too,
Yeah,
and
yeah. Well,
I found it very pleasurable when Mr. Trump said, I didn't understand it, I didn't get it." My reaction was exactly.
yeah. Well, he wasn't going to. I mean, I got some of it. Uh, the I got into Kendrick Lamar a while ago, but I haven't really been following his, when he first won the Grammys. But the Butterfly one, that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, that album. But beyond that, I just
You
haven't
gotta
been.
you gotta go for the lyrics. That's what I do, because I
Yeah.
don't get it all the first time around, so I go for the lyrics.
Well, you don't get it unless you listen to it 100 times a day, and then you get it.
Yeah.
But but it reminds me of in rock when in rock lyrics in the 70s when they didn't have lyrics on
Yeah, when
you
you
know,
couldn't see him on screen.
and you couldn't see sometimes you thought a song was something that it
Yeah.
wasn't about at
Oh, that
all.
happened a lot. That happened during the '60s all the time.
Yeah. And then of course if you were in an altered state, that was screwed up too. So, what the heck's
I
going
don't
on?
know anything about that. I wouldn't
So I
know.
just say, hey, can I dance to it? Can I dance to it? Okay.
Well, I'll admit to some things because the statute of limitations has run.
Yeah. I will say this. I will say I was at Harvard at the same time that RFK Jr. was there. He had better drugs than I did. That's what I'll say. He had better drugs than I. I had
I,
I
wa- I
had
heard
I had
rumors. I heard rumors the dude was dealing, man.
I had I had
I was
babe
hearing from
I had
other people that he was dealing.
oh yes, he was. He was.
I
I
didn't
had
know you. I didn't know you well enough to ask, and I didn't want to get you in trouble, right? Because
oh no,
I had heard from your cousins that you were at Harvard, and I was going, oh well, good for him. But
I had baby aspirin compared to what he had. And I'm just saying that RFK Jr. was he was more than a head. He was like
no, he was
uh,
way into it. Yeah,
yeah. And the thing is, there was I remember being in a crowd of people and someone was passing around something mild like a marijuana cigarette,
shit.
and someone would say, "Hey, don't take that. You'll never be president," and as if
No,
that
man,
was some
all you got
kind
to
of
do is say I didn't inhale.
yeah. And I said, well, and I can imagine RFK Jr. would say, I can't do that. I'll never be direct secretary of HHS. But there he is. Here he is. He's secretary of HHS. I don't
Yeah.
know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think that,
The Democrats didn't hit him with it. You had a
yeah.
reputation for having been addicted and
Oh,
all of this stuff. How do we know, that it's not going to happen? And that shows you how wimpy the Democrats are, right? They said, no, we don't want to go after somebody on their addiction because, especially if they're reformed, okay.
yeah. Well,
And so they should have gone for it. They should have said,
you know what?
could you explain it?
You know
You
what I
don't have to
mean?
attack him on a mean streak. You just have to say, how did this happen and what does that experience bring for you
Right.
to this job? That's you could you got to know when to be hard and you got to know when to just give somebody the the
Yeah.
open space to be able to lynch themselves essentially.
Yeah. I just think that we have a government now that you can't trust. You have a president you can't trust. You have a government you can't trust.
You're starting to
Everything you
sound like a
say,
Trumper, man. Dude, take an aspirin.
everything they say, you have to be skeptical of all the time. And who's telling the truth? And you have to make a informed decision based on using several sources, some maybe more credible than others, some public, some private. But it is not easy to be an
Well,
American
that's the problem.
citizen.
Yeah, that's exactly the problem. The people have to be. Jefferson said this, right? The people, what an informed public, right, is
Hmm.
necessary to a
Hmm.
democracy. An informed
Hmm.
public, and so
Hmm.
it takes work to be informed, and it's even more difficult now because there's so many challenging perspectives out there that are afactual, and
Yeah.
contorted. So it takes even more work, and it's too easy for people to find validation in all the wrong places.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, some
we have
people.
a failure of education at the
Yeah.
grade levels, at the high school level. There's clearly a representation of that factor in the voting.
Yeah.
You got more people, with college educations that vote in one direction, and you have people that are not college educated voting in the other direction. When you have that clear a divide, right? It's an indication that the lower grades have not done a good job of educating people about how government really works. They're not educating people about the seriousness of not just feeling obligated to vote, right, as a member of the society and as a citizen, but of the necessity, not just the obligation, but the necessity of voting. Other countries have mandatory voting. If the
Yeah.
United States was serious about democracy, we would have mandatory voting. You got to
That
show
would
up.
be great. Mandatory voting would be a good idea, I think. But
Mandatory voting and change the goddamn voting day from Tuesday. I mean, what
yeah,
the
but
hell is that? You
no,
know?
Tuesday's a good day, but a weekend day would be good. I mean,
Yeah,
then
that's what
people
I'm
would make a
saying.
party out of it.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
but the whole idea about mandatory voting, I can see why some people would bristle because they say, "Man, you're going to make me do it. You're going to make me vote." You know,
Okay,
people
that's
make an
against my
argument about
freedom.
that.
That's against my freedom. Okay.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
okay. Well, what
right,
what
right.
85.7 million people chose to not exercise their right to vote, and now they're going to bitch about what happens to them? Let's let's
Yeah,
let's do it. Let's
yeah.
have that argument. Let's have that argument. Yeah, I'm going to vote. I'm going to make you vote. Yes. Okay. The other one is,
Mandatory,
hey,
mandatory.
hey, you're gonna it's like putting on that mask, man.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, and you watched your grandma die, right? When she said, no,
yeah,
there's no such thing as COVID, and it ain't real,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. All right, Dan. Listen. Well,
Oh,
I
now
said I
it's the
just
flu.
keep.
Now it's the ordinary flu, dude. That's why I'm concerned about you. As long as you don't have fever, you're pretty much okay.
Yeah, there's no fever, so that's not flu, right?
Yeah.
That's just cold.
Fever and aches, aches and pains.
But if I hear that Trump has done something while we were talking, then that would make me sick. But I don't think he's done anything since. Now it's just Hegseth and Dance. They've been in Europe. Just these are our friends. The
No,
Europeans are our
I'm glad
allies.
they're there. I'm glad they're there, and I'm glad they're shooting their mouths off. Don't forget Mr. Rubio. Little Marco's there
Oh
too.
yeah,
So,
yeah. So it's
and when we got Fogel back from Russia, right?
oh yeah, yeah. The
Yeah,
teacher.
the people who actually did the work of getting him back, including the billionaire that flew him back on his private plane, right? Yeah,
Mhm.
they were just in the background in the press conference, and they never got called to the front. So it was just between Fogel, who was very, very, very gratified towards
Yeah,
Trump, right? He said he's a hero. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's a story behind that, I'm sure. Just like there was a story when Ronald Reagan's team told the Iranians not to let the hostages go until after Ronnie got
Oh yeah,
sworn in. Yeah,
yeah.
and if people
So
don't want to recognize that history. They don't want to recognize that stuff at all. They don't want to recognize that Edwin Meese was the first guy who said openly when under the Reagan administration, he was the attorney general. He said the Supreme Court is not necessarily the highest arbiter. And everybody
Edwin
said, "What?
Meese.
Shut up, Ed."
All right, now when you get to Edwin Meese, I think it's time to go. Because Edwin
Yeah,
Meese, he used to live in my town when I lived in Orinda. I think Edwin Meese. I think he
yeah.
was
He
an
was he
Orinda
was
guy.
EB because he was DA for a
Yeah.
while. But then he copped out and he went to work for Bechtel.
Oh
So he
yeah.
went for the money,
It's
and at least three people, maybe four, that were on Reagan's original cabinet were Bechtel.
mm.
Were
Oh
from Bechtel.
yeah. They were their power global capitalist players, right?
Yeah. Well,
Builders,
it was like under
engineers.
Bush, Halliburton and all that. Remember that stuff?
Yeah, Halliburton,
Halliburton. Halliburton.
Halliburton. Yeah,
Yeah. So
Halliburton.
see, once again, is the general public understanding those connections, that relationship, right? So they shouldn't be surprised that five billionaires show up, backing Trump, right? And that they
Yeah.
appear on the stage when he gets sworn in. That's not a surprise.
All right.
Okay.
Hey, as a final question for our conversation today, what's going to get Elon Musk out? What is it going to take to get him knocked down a notch?
I
He's
think
he's
it'll be. I think Trump can't take him getting the spotlight more than Trump.
right.
Okay, so that's going to wear thin pretty quick. So he's going to be more limited. Then the question is, will he fight back? from
Ha.
outside the Oval Office. Okay,
Yeah.
and that'll be very interesting because that kind of fight, and he could easily win that fight. Because
Trump or Musk?
Musk, he could easily
Oh,
win that fight because the real threat of primarying everybody, right?
mhm.
Okay,
Oh,
comes
he's got
from
the
his
money.
money.
Yeah,
That's right.
he's got
That's
the
right.
money.
So, once again, campaign finance reform, folks. Mandatory
Yeah,
voting
that's the
and
truth.
campaign finance reform. That's what the country needs. If you don't understand that, then please don't vote.
How about you? How about if you don't vote, you lose your citizenship?
Woo! Woo! That's fascist.
Hey,
That is outright fascist.
it's
Yeah,
reverse fascism. Reverse
yeah,
fascism.
yeah.
We
Now,
don't have brown shirts. We have brown skin.
yeah, no, what we do is we encourage people to vote, okay, by
Or
saying,
else. Or
yeah,
else.
we encourage people to vote by saying we're going to cover any costs associated with your exercising, the right to vote, right? So it's the opposite, right? The opposite
Mm.
of the poll tax. Remember that?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so we do the opposite of the poll tax, and we say we're going to give you a tax deduction for exercising the right to vote.
Ah, that's a good one.
Oh,
If
really?
you, if you
Gee, I
vote,
must have given some thought to these things
if
in
you
my
have a if you
53 years of teaching.
if well, is that constitutional? If you vote, we'll give you a tax deduction.
Yeah,
Is that good?
yeah,
Is that good?
yeah. I think, yeah. I don't know if you need an amendment. I think you could pass it as a policy. Congress could pass it as a law. I don't think you need an amendment,
Oh,
but
I like
but
that. I like. All
but
right.
well, the people on the right, you have to anticipate, right? Remember, no lawyer asks a question they don't already know the answer to. Okay,
Yeah.
and the
Mhm.
first question that's going to be asked is, "What are the right going to do?" And they're going to be against that because they've been for voter suppression, right? For
Mhm.
eternity. It's not that they've been for voter suppression like during the Trump administration, or that they were for voter suppression during the Bush administration. You got to go all the way back to denying formerly enslaved people the right to vote. You had to have the
Yeah.
13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, passed in concert all together.
I like that idea that instead of like instead of putting on your taxes that you want to pay $1 for the presidential campaign or
Yeah,
something.
contribute to, yeah, the
Contribute, yeah.
campaign.
Instead, you say, okay, look, if I pay my taxes and if I vote, and here's my voting certificate, that voting thing that you stick on your shirt or whatever, and if you can prove that you voted, you can get a X% write off or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, yeah. Yep,
That'd be good. I
yep,
like that.
yep.
I like that because you voted. If you vote, and then you can get the right involved because the right would hate it because it's
Yeah.
taxation. Oh, we owe
So what
taxation.
has to happen is it has to happen at the state level first. It has to happen at state
Ah,
level first, and the West Coast states could do it. They could do it. They could handle it. I'm as soon as we're offline today, I am going to research those cities that already have campaign finance limitations,
yeah,
and
because I like that idea you had about you know, yeah, the limit the doing something to campaign violence because that's a good idea. All right, so there, Dan, we got some good things. We got people who agree. Hello, Juanita Salai Wilson. Happy
yeah. Hello,
Valentine's Day
Anita. Good to hear from
to
you.
Juanita and all. Because we have regular people who listen to us who wonder where the hell have you been, Emil? Well, you can tell I've been getting kind of sick here. I'm in my luxurious Lower East Side hotel in New York City. Um, no, it's actually very nice. All the rats that I've seen in New York are all uptown, all uptown. Here on the Lower
Okay.
East Side,
Is this
the rats
was
wear
that
suits.
metaphorical? Was that metaphorical rats or
Yeah,
real
yeah.
rats?
Well, I'm just saying that the rats in the Lower East Side are all like regular people with suits and ties. So they're respectable rats in
Yeah,
the Lower
right.
East Side. But uptown, that's where you see.
Uh,
And then of
yeah,
course if you see one, you don't want to like use a trap.
no,
You
you
want to
don't want
be
to disturb them. You want to
yeah.
let them go about their business.
Yeah. And you
Yeah,
want to be
you know.
humane if you catch them,
Well,
you know.
have you seen rats that are cornered? Get up on their hind feet, and
Oh,
yeah,
like
you
like
got to
ballet
back off.
dancers?
You got to
Yeah,
back the
like
hell
that. Yeah.
off, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So,
I know. So
yeah.
no, New York has been, it snowed here a couple of days. It's
Oh
been
yeah,
kind of
that's
cool.
right. Yeah.
And so I'm actually looking forward to getting out of here. No, no, actually it's not bad. It's not the people are good. And like I said, the Shine Challenge, people if they're in New York, they should see the Shine Challenge 2025 Theater for the New City. It plays Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, the final show. And that's it. So, Dan, thank you for being with me. Um,
Thanks for having me as always,
and
and
yeah,
thank you for
and
Juanita for chiming in and tell your friends. Right? Well, they can look at this episode on my Facebook and X, as well as on Emil's links, all of his various links.
okay, all
Uh,
right.
thank you.
Daniel Phil
Yeah,
Gonzalez, my friend, College of Ethnic Studies, Asian American Studies, Professor Emeritus. There he goes. And I haven't asked him about Jimmy Butler, but Jimmy Butler and the Warriors, making the Warriors exciting again, I think. Okay, in San Francisco sports, forget about the Giants for now. Let's see. That's it. Hey, look, yeah, I try to make this short. I'm just trying to uh, to talk to those of you. I mean, I haven't been posting on Patreon, so you can catch us on YouTube, the YouTube channel, Emil Amok one, also on Twitter at Emil Amok, and on Facebook at Emil Guillermo.media. Maybe that's where you're seeing this. If you can comment on Facebook, you can comment on YouTube. But anyway, it's good seeing you. A play, there's something about a play. So, the one thing I like about being in a play, especially if you're not the star, but you're a pivotal part, you're like the Jenga piece. Being in a play is like being a Jenga piece. And you just never know which piece you pull out and the whole thing falls apart, right? But you just know that you are one single Jenga kind of production. And we got this good production of the Shine Challenge. There's people who are stars, but they're part of a production. Stars meaning the main players. But like I said, it's like one almost seamless kind of thing. And only if you play Jenga and you like try to pull out one, you see how important it all is. And that's what being a team is, right? So that's why I like doing these theater things. Not people ask, are you going to be in more productions? You want to do more acting in theater or in the movies? No, I'm doing a little stand up here and there, doing my one man show in Fresno coming up. I'm going to be in Fresno at the Rogue Festival, kind of a workshop show, but I'm going to be there. But the thing is, I just love the act of performing my solo shows. But when I do these theater things, I do it because they tell you, they give you a sense of teamwork, a sense of being a part of something bigger than yourself, a sort of what it's supposed to be like to be an American, right? To be a part of a society, to be part of an American democracy. So that's kind of the feeling I get when I'm doing a theater production. And if you haven't tried to do some community acting or whatever, you should try it and see what I mean. Anyway, thank you. Thank you for being here with me today. Thank you for listening. Um, we're here usually Monday through Friday. Sometimes if you don't see me show up live at 2 p.m. Pacific, then go into YouTube at Emil Amok one. Check out Dan's stuff also. And yeah, I think we have a direction. moving forward. It's like people ask, oh, what are we going to do about what's happening? Well, I think there are some things that we can do. And I think a big thing is what we saw or what we've seen yesterday and today, and the resignations of the prosecutors who refuse to go along with what the government wants to do with Eric Adams and, throw out his indictments. They got the goods on Eric Adams. They the mayor of New York. The prosecutors resign. Would rather resign. They're heroic. Someone mentioned Archibald Cox. When his resignation. Back during Watergate. I'm just saying that these are heroic moments, and people should stop and pay attention to that. And from that, get the courage to go out and do things on their own. So that's it. I'd like to end with a little meditation. I'll do the laughter yoga again on Patreon soon, when I get back to California. But for now, a little loving kindness. Hey, it's Valentine's Day. Happy birthday happy Valentine's Day to the loves of your life. You know who they are. Your kids. You got to give Valentine's to your kids. You know. You got, because they're the loves of your life. They're the product of your love, right? And your wives and spouses and all that, right? Girlfriends. Send the love out. Send it out twofold today on Valentine's Day, because it comes back. It comes back double, fourfold, eightfold. Comes back. So a little loving kindness meditation here. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Hey, see you at the China Challenge tonight in New York City. Till next time. Mahal Kita.